to Cinema Bites, your go-to for movie recaps in a flash, big twists, epic moments, all in just minutes. Our movie begins in a large store called Walmart. We see the workers preparing to open on Black Friday. At that moment, Monty climbs a ladder to hang a sign and tie it to the shelf. Suddenly, he notices something strange crashing through the ceiling at high speed and falling to the ground. Monty drops what he's holding and goes to check out the strange object. As he gets closer, he sees something very odd, a disgusting moving mass. He approaches it further and finds that it splits open in the middle, releasing a parasite-like creature. The creature opens its mouth and sprays a white substance onto Monty's face. At that moment, we hear a scream filling the place and Monty disappears. In the next scene, we are introduced to Ken Bates, who is on his way to drop off his daughters at his ex-wife's house before heading to work at a store. We understand that his ex-wife recently married a decent man, but the daughters complain that their mom's house is boring. It's clear they want to stay with Ken, but he tells them he has work and can't stay home anyway. He reluctantly leaves them with their mother and heads to work. Next, we meet Chris Jodecki, Ken's co-worker, who picks him up on the way. We learn that Chris is immature and still lives with his parents, which annoys his father. Despite this, Chris and Ken have a good relationship, which makes work bearable for them. They arrive at work feeling frustrated because they have to work on Thanksgiving. On their way, they notice that the Walmart store is closed on such an important day, which surprises them. Of course, they have no idea that a parasite has attacked the people there. Meanwhile, we see a long line of people waiting outside a store called We Live Toys, eager for it to open. Among them is a man and his wife waiting to buy toys for their kids. The man feels unwell and complains of a stomachache, but his wife urges him to endure it so they don't lose their spot in line. Back at the store, Ken and Chris join their co-workers to help prepare for Black Friday. Ken teases Marnie, and from their conversation, we understand they are in a relationship. Meanwhile, another employee named Pritchard steps outside through the back door for a smoke. He notices a slimy substance on a parked car and approaches to get a better look. The door accidentally locks behind him, trapping him outside. As he knocks for someone to hear him, he sees something strange approaching him and attacking. In the next scene, the employees are informed they won't be paid for their breaks that night, adding to their frustration about working on Thanksgiving. On top of that, the new employee Emmett keeps sticking to Ken all day. After finishing the preparations, they finally open the doors. Customers rush in like maniacs, grabbing everything in sight, leaving the employees overwhelmed with work. Chris deals with an angry customer and notices a slimy substance on the register. Meanwhile, Marnie notices a man standing in the middle of the store staring at her. She feels uneasy but tries to ignore him and continue working. Amidst the chaos, a customer sits on Santa's big chair, unaware that the parasite is hiding underneath it. Chris is tasked with cleaning up a mess caused by the customers, but the liquid turns out to be from the parasite. Some employees are already infected, and as Chris cleans, infected co-workers attack him. He narrowly escapes by knocking over toys on them. Shortly after, Archie, another employee, emerges from the stockroom and is shocked by the scene. He reports to the manager, who decides to lock Chris in the stockroom until the customers leave. No one believes Chris's claims that the customers attacked him. Meanwhile, Emmett is also attacked by an infected customer who sprays him with the white substance to infect him. Ken saves him at the last moment, and they both run to warn the others. They try calling the police, but the line is busy. Despite everything happening, the manager insists on keeping the store open until the end of the night, thinking the employees are exaggerating to leave early. Soon after, Emmett has a seizure and begins transforming into a grotesque creature. When Anita tries to help him, he kills her and fully transforms into a monster. He attempts to attack the others, but Archie shoots him with a nail gun and pushes him outside the store. They call the neighboring store for help, only to learn that everyone there has already turned. A woman on the line suggests isolating the infected from the uninfected, but the call suddenly cuts off. They realize the infected have completely taken over the neighboring store. The employees decide to escape to the display floor and hide there until things calm down. Meanwhile, the manager is only concerned about sales performance, prompting the employees to tell him to shut up. At that moment, Anita also begins transforming, forcing everyone to flee to the sales floor. When they step out, they are horrified to find the entire floor covered in blood. A transformed customer drags a corpse behind her. Archie, Brian, and Chris notice more infected customers approaching the store and risk their lives to close the doors, giving the others a chance to escape to the back storage area. Ken heads to the restroom and finds a bottle of whiskey he had hidden there. The manager sees him searching for something and asks what he's doing. Just then, they encounter an infected customer emerging from a stall and attacking Ken. Together, they push the creature away and run. Meanwhile, Marnie notices the infected customers gathering at the Santa section. As she gets gets closer, she sees them merging into a massive parasite that grows bigger by the minute. Alarmed, she retreats to the back area where she meets Ken, the manager, and other employees. They finally lock all the doors to prevent anyone from entering the store. Suddenly, a police car arrives, and they feel relieved that help has finally come. But their joy is short-lived. Because the police car crashes into the store, breaking the glass, it allows the infected to enter. The employees run away, but Chris encounters an infected woman who attacks him. When Archie tries to help, the woman spits on him and bites him too. Archie tells Chris to stand up and fight until his last breath, but shortly afterward, he's devoured. At that point, the remaining employees retreat to the back section, and Emmett follows them after becoming infected. It seems like everyone is doomed, but Marnie attacks Emmett with a gas cylinder key, leaving only Ken, Marnie, Brian, Chris, and the manager. Unfortunately, the power goes out, forcing them to use glow-in-the-dark toys to see. They realize they have no other option but to stay put until the situation calms down. After a few hours, Marnie brings them food from the fridge and they start eating. But before they can enjoy their meal, Ken and Chris argue. Chris mocks Ken for working there and being in a relationship with Marnie, who is much younger than him. However, Marnie surprises them by revealing that she's not actually in a relationship with Ken, which upsets him because he thought their relationship was special. Disheartened, Ken decides to leave the store. The group then agrees to head to the electrical room where they discover they can escape through the storage area. They plan to find a pickup truck to escape in. While searching for tools to open the truck, Emmett appears, now stronger than before. He attacks them, but Ken manages to defeat him, though he gets bitten in the process. When the others try to help, Ken asks them to leave him behind, realizing he's about to turn. They suggest cutting off his arm to stop the infection from spreading, but Ken refuses, forcing the group to leave him behind as they continue their escape. When they open the loading dock door, they run to the nearest car. Meanwhile, Ken sits and waits for the transformation, but for some reason, he remains unchanged. As he ponders what to do, an infected woman enters through the door. Startled, Ken distracts her by activating a toy and throwing it, then hides behind the shelves. On the other side, Chris notices a group of infected running toward them. Panicked, he tries to start the car but fails, so he returns to the others to inform them of the problem. The infected reach the car and start attacking it, but the group retreats back into the store without getting hurt. They then escape through the emergency exit, which leads to the roof. However, they encounter another problem. The parasite, which has grown enormous, breaks through the ceiling and reaches the roof. The manager, frustrated, explodes in anger about how much he hates customers. He opens the roof door to push the parasite away. Meanwhile, Ken puts on roller shoes and sets traps to distract the infected woman chasing him. She eventually catches him, and he realizes she's the same woman he tried to help earlier. She drags him toward the parasite, but he hits her with his roller shoe and escapes. Back on the roof, Brian reveals that he was the one who bit Ken, not the infected, because he's always hated him and took the opportunity to get rid of him. When Marnie hears this, she fights with Brian, and they both fall off the roof. Fortunately, they land in a pile of trash and are unharmed. Chris jumps down after them, and the three of them run toward the cars to find one to escape in. By this time, the store is completely overrun by the parasite, which is about to explode. Suddenly, it bursts out of the roof, setting the entire place on fire. The parasite, which started small, has now transformed into a massive monster, 100 times more dangerous than any other creature. Brian notices that the parasite is made up of all the customers and believes he can communicate with them using his managerial skills. The group doubts him, but he insists on trying. Brian approaches the monster calmly, as if he's about to negotiate with a customer. Surprisingly, the monster listens and calms down, but then, without warning, it pushes Brian away, killing him. Chris and Marnie are horrified by what they see and lose hope of surviving. At that moment, Ken arrives with his car keys. They run toward the car, but the monster attacks them. Realizing someone must distract the monster for the others to escape, Ken volunteers. He yells at the monster while the other two run toward the car. Chris finds a pickup truck and comes up with an idea. He drives the truck toward the monster, which mistakes it for a human and tries to attack it, wrapping it in a web-like substance. Chris jumps out of the truck, and the truck's edges pierce the monster's eye, causing it to fall into the fire. Ken, Chris, and Marnie watch as the monster dies. They get into the car and drive away. However, on their way, they see more monsters emerging from other stores. And that's where the story ends. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more updates. Goodbye.